Good evening, friends. I'm coming here again to bring you some stories from Shining Star Waldorf School. I'm Marcia Johnson, and the kids call me Mrs. Johnson, and I've been teaching in Waldorf for about 25 years. And just this year, I am teaching a grade 4 and 5 combination class. I often teach combination classes, and I really enjoy it. And we are spending 2 weeks studying ancient Mesopotamia. Yeah, it's an ancient civilization that took place about 6,000 years ago. It's a long time. 4,000 years before the year zero. Now we're 2,020 years after the year zero. So this story is extremely old, and it is one of the oldest stories in the world, the known world, and it comes from a culture that was really interesting and amazing. I wish I had time to tell you all about that. But it's enough to know tonight that this story comes to us from Mesopotamia, which means between the rivers, the land between the rivers, and the rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates, and they flow far away from Oregon, where I'm from, in an area today that we would kind of call the Middle East, where Iraq is and Kuwait is and Syria. And there's a beautiful, beautiful valley there that's kind of like the Willamette Valley here in Oregon. Actually, it has these large rivers and mountains where the snow is melting and the water flows, and you get a very, very rich and fertile land. You can grow many things. And this story takes place not too long after the end of an ice age, so the poles in the ice were kind of retreating, and humans began to do a lot of agriculture and fishing and creating civilizations that stayed in one place instead of wandering about on the earth as nomadic hunter-gatherers. So this special story tonight is called The Epic of Gilgamesh. Epic means a great, great story, and this is truly a great, great story, and I'll probably tell it in 2 parts, maybe 3. We'll see. Gilgamesh is a hero. He's a king, very large person, handsome, well-built, outstanding looking. He would be somebody you would notice in a crowd because he would be kind of like a basketball player today, maybe. But Gilgamesh was a king long ago and living in the land of Mesopotamia, which was a number of kind of smaller cultures gathered into one place. And his ancestors and he lived in the city of Uruk. And Uruk was an incredible city for its time. It's actually hard for us to believe that 3,000 years before year zero, 4,000 years before year zero, people built these cities surrounded by walls. They were like little individual countries. Each city-state was its own little culture and civilization. And Gilgamesh, yeah, it's a funny name, Gilgamesh, he is of the line of the kings of Uruk. Each city in this beautiful crescent, fertile valley was built of mostly bricks that were made of mud, which was dried and then formed into buildings, walls, homes. And the largest building of all in the city of Uruk and the other cities was the Ziggurat. And the Ziggurat is a temple, and it's like a pyramid, but instead of having the straight sides of a pyramid, it was stepped. So it had a level, then it went out another level, went out another level, and went out. You could have 5 or 6 of these layers, and as they went up, the building kind of part got smaller until the very top. And they had very long stairways that went up the fronts and sides, and probably hundreds of stairs. And that's where the priest kings lives. They lived. They were living truly like gods on earth. And they lived in the ziggurats, and they were kings, but they were also the priests and the highest figures of their culture. So Gilgamesh is one of those figures, and he comes to us with knowing that his father was a human being, but his mother was a god. So Gilgamesh himself is deemed both god and human in the story, and as a matter of fact, he's considered 2/3 god and only 1/3 human. So that's something we know about Gilgamesh right away. He's very tall, he's extremely strong, he's very driven, he's very focused, and he is descended directly from heavenly figures, the gods of the time, as well as human king. And he becomes the king of Uruk. And he's a little bit lonely. He still visits and talks with his mother. And one night he has a dream, and Gilgamesh has a dream in which he is able to find a stone. And the people have noticed this stone because it's a meteor. A meteor has fallen from the sky, and the people are interested in it. And Gilgamesh, in his dream, he comes along and he finds the meteor with all the people around it, and he ties a strap around his head, and no one can move the meteor, it's so heavy, but Gilgamesh can tie it up with this strap, and he can actually pick it up, and he can move the meteor. And it's very remarkable that he can do this, and he wakes from his dream, and he goes to see his mother, and his mother is able to tell him when he has dreams what they mean. And so he tells her about this dream, and he has some other dreams too. And in the dream, she interprets it for him correctly, and she says, Gilgamesh, my son, you've been lonely. You have no like companions that are similar to you in this city of Uruk or in the area. And your dream means you're about to find a friend. A friend is going to come to you, my son, and you will have a friend. So Gilgamesh is very pleased about this, and he goes back to his ziggurat where he lives and starts thinking and wondering how he's going to recognize this friend who's going to come to him. Now, meanwhile, far away out in the countryside, in the hills, in the wild places, there is a young hunter, and Hunter spends his days hunting. Very important job in those days. He would set traps for fish. He would dig pits that animals would fall in, and then he could get them. He would make snares and lay them all over and catch other animals in this way, and that's what he did with his whole life. And one day, he left his father and his home and went out, and all of his traps were smashed. All of his fish nets were torn up.